All right, welcome in. This is our first off-season podcast. I'm here with my partner in crime, Matt Duraldi. We're here to review the Super Bowl. We're going to recap the game, talk about the fantasy implications. So this is going to be a fantasy show. We're very football focused in the format that we play in, and that we find the most entertaining, and that we'll hope will attract a new type of audience here that we don't see a lot of information on. Is the Superflex league with a third wide receiver. So we do start 11 players in our starting lineups, and our league and our friends have found it to be much more competitive, much more enjoyable. You get to learn a lot more about all the players. So our lens of evaluating and looking at players includes a little bit deeper rosters, and especially at the quarterback position, looking for potentially safer options, guys that are going to be in the starting role permanently, and making safer calls maybe at quarterback than you would otherwise in a one quarterback league. So Matt, welcome in. So our initial thoughts on the game here. What were your thoughts on Vegas as the venue? Did you enjoy seeing Allegiant Stadium?
Yeah, I thought Vegas was honestly should be in the rotation going forward quite a bit. I mean, just the city itself, the stars that were out, the stadium, all the above. Just watching, the stuff posted guys at the blackjack table the days before really just seemed like a good vibe all around. Kelsey and Swift at the win, whatever afterwards, partying.
Yeah, I
All in
saw the
all,
after
really,
party. It was
really
so
good.
cool.
I
All
don't
the
know if
social
you were
media content that
following.
comes out of it too. The mask that Jason Kelsey was wearing
Oh
too.
my God. Jason Kelsey was like following them out of the club, like stumbling over.
Yeah, yeah. As Travis was giving Taylor her jacket or his jacket and stuff. Yeah, that was
Oh
funny.
my God.
Yeah.
Did
So
you
I thought,
follow did you follow the over under on the Reba McIntyre
yeah, 10 seconds on the
whatever?
Brave, and she did it for like 4, and then took a quick breath and held it out for six or 6.5 more seconds. Yeah.
So apparently there was like a big controversy. Some sports books were paying the under before the Brave, and some were paying the over after the Brave. So it was like a complete and total mess. And then not only that, apparently there was a streaker that ran onto the field. I know they can't show those anymore, but I know Tony Romo was pretty stoked on that.
I was talking about
But
it. Yeah.
but I guess to cap off like the Vegas thing, it never ceases to amaze me that the over under was 47.5 and it was 47 points. I don't know how they do this time and time again, but
Yeah, just right on.
it was just unbelievable. I'm sure people were sweating it out in the first quarter, and then so close, but that's gambling. But I guess to
Yeah,
the to the
and
game itself.
the extra point prevented them from going over, and I think it was 47.5 all the way up to like a half hour before kickoff, and then they went down to 46.5. So the bettors that got in right before the game, I think if you bet the under at 46.5, you ended up losing that bet too. So just
It's just,
so close on the over under.
oh my God. But I guess, I mean, the game itself, what'd you think overall?
Oh man, I thought it was one of the best Super Bowls that we had seen. I was I think it's a very common feeling to have that. I thought it was going to be a terrible game at halftime. It was 10-3, a lot of defense, a lot of just like not throwing the ball beyond the sticks at all. It was just all right next to the
Yeah.
line of scrimmage. Christian McCaffrey trying to get established, and really, back-to-back runs to on first and second downs, not getting first downs. It was an interesting thing. He hit Ayuk once. He hit Kittle deep once, and then Mahomes hit like Mecole Hardman for that 50-yard play. But
Yeah.
other than that, it was really, really slow in the first half. And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, here we go. And the offenses started to score. There was the miss or the muffed punt or whatever you want to call that, the mishap
Mhm.
on special teams for San Francisco that led directly to a touchdown for the Chiefs. And I really thought after that point that the game really picked up. And I think that the tone set in the first half helped the second half, because it legitimately felt like the defenses might be able to get a stop, and like Kansas City was able to stop San Francisco from
Mhm.
scoring a touchdown in overtime, which was ended up being a huge play, right, with Chris Jones coming free. But yeah, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it was bizarre with the way it started because it just looked like San Francisco was marching down the field and was going to score right away, and then something that we never see, McCaffrey just giving up the ball,
Yeah,
and that
that's
was just
true.
it
To
was
set the
just
tone for the game, right?
it,
Just marching down the field, and then on the 20, boom, McCaffrey fumbles.
and it's one of those things. Just watching the Niners over the years, I feel like they always get off to these really hot starts where they look unstoppable, and then something or another happens and they just sort of trip over themselves, which obviously they played well overall, but they didn't get it done. But I mean, I guess you can say that that was sort of negated by the Pacheco fumble later. But
Yeah, on the
still
9 yard
you're
line.
marching
What
down
was
the
he
field,
doing?
and you're looking good, and you just don't see CMC. And my initial thought was, if Shanahan loves his doghouse, like, is he gonna just bench him after that?
It's
And
gonna
we're
be
gonna
Elijah
see
Mitchell show.
Elijah Mitchell and I don't Trey Sermon still on the team. I don't know, but
I think he's on the Colts now, but yeah, I get the idea.
okay,
Trey
you
Mason.
get the idea. But yeah, I mean, it was just it was bizarre, and I mean, when KC got within, or when they kicked that field goal at the end of the first half, it just never felt like KC was even remotely out of it. It just feels like they
No.
were kind of licking their chops, and even when they turned the ball over, it just never felt to me that the Niners were fully in control. And it's weird because a lot of people that I've listened to after the game are like, you got to feed McCaffrey, you got to feed McCaffrey, and then you look, he touched the ball 30 times. I
Yeah,
mean, that's a lot. My biggest issue is with Ayuk, and I know that their corners were just playing out of their minds, but anytime you see the ball thrown to Ayuk, he's just open and he's just a monster with it. And I just think sometimes you have to force feed those guys. Same with Kittle. I know they probably use Kittle more in blocking schemes, and I get it. But I think
Kittle missed the
just
second half with injury.
the
He wasn't.
oh, he
Yeah,
was the whole
he
out.
I think he
No, he
might have
came back.
come.
He
I
came
think
back.
he might have come back
He did.
into the
He did.
game, but like it was a thing where it was a Super Bowl, right? I mean, he was
Yeah.
hurt.
They
Yeah,
gave
that's
him a
why they
shot of
didn't use
something.
him. I agree with
Yeah.
you on Ayuk. Like if looking even just at the 3rd and 4 play, even when Chris Jones came free right there in overtime, the first read was to Juwan Jennings because the
Yeah.
pressure was right in Purdy's face, and if the first read would have been Ayuk, like it was either Sneed or I'm blanking on the other Trent, blanking on the other corner's name,
McDuffie.
McDuffie. Like what it was one of those two were on Ayuk, and I think it was Sneed completely fell. Ayuk was wide
Just
open in the end
fell.
zone at the
Yeah.
post, right? He slipped and
Yeah.
fell. And if Ayuk is the first read there, I mean, Purdy could have just backpedaled and lofted it up like you or I could have made a wobbly duck pass to a wide open Ayuk there. But so I
Yeah.
agree. I think Ayuk
I
probably
mean,
should have been a bigger part of the game plan.
even on that play, I mean, Jennings, he was kind of open too. I mean, it wasn't as wide open as Ayuk was, but that was such a bizarre play because you want to say like, oh, Chris Jones is a difference maker. He got to the quarterback, but they just sort of let him through. Like
Oh,
somebody missed an assignment, and he
completely didn't
just
block him. It was number
shot out of
68. Yeah. Yeah. The right
yeah, he
guard
just
just
shot
did
out of a
not block
cannon.
him. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it is what it is. I think Purdy played well, and I think to me he passed the eye test. He did a lot of good. He proved he wasn't just a game manager, and I think he just ran
Mm.
into the buzzsaw that is Patrick Mahomes right
What do,
now. And
what do you think about the throw he missed to Debo Samuel on the seam route? It was
yeah,
the media coverage on that hasn't been like at all, but he did with pressure in his face miss an open Debo on a seam route that was eerily similar to the Emmanuel Sanders throw that Garoppolo missed. I mean, Sanders might have been a
yeah,
little bit more open, might have been a little bit deeper throw for Garoppolo, but it was a very similar type of play, and it would have had a major impact if he had hit
that's fair.
Debo, and he
Yeah,
he got rid of it a little bit earlier than he wanted to, but he just launched that ball out of bounds. I mean, they give Debo a shot.
yeah, yeah. That's true. I mean, it's tough, man. It's tough. I mean, a lot of he's still going to be that polarizing guy this off season. I think it was like Dan Orlovsky says he's like a top 7 quarterback, which I completely disagree with. But I also don't agree that he's just a plug and play system guy either. I mean, if you want to make the argument that if you put him on Carolina, he would stink. it's probably fine. But I mean, it is what it
Well, I
is.
mean, we
And
watched Bryce Young struggle on the Panthers. I think pretty much anybody would struggle on the Panthers throwing to Jonathan Mingo. Like if that's your one, you're probably in trouble. So,
oh
I
God,
think Purdy has a decent case to be in the top 10. If you want to push him up to 7, you're going to start putting him over guys that are pretty good. I mean, I don't know that I really see him up over Aaron Rodgers when he's healthy, or up over Dak Prescott even. I mean, that's probably controversial because it's Cowboys 49ers. A lot of people are out on Dak, but I personally love Dak. So,
yeah.
um, it's interesting. So going down then to the awards, if San Francisco had won, who would have been your pick for MVP?
Honestly, if Moody had hit that extra point and they would have won that game, how could you not say Moody? I mean,
My
what
Yeah,
was his first field goal was a
55
was a
yarder.
Super Bowl record and
Yeah,
nailed it. I mean,
that
he
Super Bowl
was
record
can't miss.
stood for about 45 minutes.
Yeah, and then
Because
Butker
Butker hit a
got it.
57-yarder after that.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been Purdy or McCaffrey, but it's fun to think about Moody or even Juwan Jennings, because I
Yeah,
didn't realize
that's who
that
I was gonna say.
Juwan Jennings was like a very highly rated quarterback prospect, like ahead of Sam Darnold and Joe Burrow. He was like a 5-star
Dude, I
recruit
saw
as a
that on the
quarterback.
broadcast. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and he kind of threw a duck, and CMC just shot out of a cannon. And then
yeah,
I
yeah.
it's funny because when you think of the Niners, they almost have they just have so many guys that sometimes I feel like it can't hurt them, but when you see these Jennings and Ray McLeod and not feeding the Ayuks of the world, sometimes you just scratch your head and you're like, do you need to complete this to use check, or should we be? I don't know. I know it's a Shanahan thing, and
Yeah.
I know Shanahan's this boy genius that never gets any flack, no matter what, and I whatever. But
Well, I
I don't
mean,
know.
Shanahan, I think, gets quite a bit of flack, really. I mean, he's, as an offensive coordinator and head coach now, he's over 3 in Super Bowls and has blown double-digit leads in all 3 games. So I think he
I
gets
agree,
quite a bit
but
of
where is
flack
he
for
getting?
losing the big
Where is
game.
the flack from? I don't hear it
Well,
every year. I hear
it's
he's a
hard.
genius. It's the Shanahan tree. It's the scheme. It's all this, and
It's hard to hate on
I don't know.
a coach that's been to 3 of the last 6 or 7 Super Bowls, whatever it is.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
don't think that anyone's calling for his head. I just
yeah.
think there needs to be a
Where's the
little bit more
criticism
cre-
as an elite coach? Yeah, I
credibility.
get it. Yeah.
Yeah,
My
but I
other
guess
NV
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was gonna change back to the MVP conversation. My other MVP, the guy that I noticed like halfway through the third quarter, I know that's still super early in the game, and a lot happened after that that would have changed the MVP conversation. But Chris Conley made 2
Mm,
big special teams plays where he tackled the punt returner in the open field and helped pin the Chiefs deep in their own territory. And he had like a 20-yard catch that was like a big momentum
that's
turner on
right.
one of the 49ers drives. So I made a quick comment, obviously it wasn't going to be him, but I was like, dude, like Conley low key the MVP of this game, when it was 10-6, nobody had really done anything on offense yet.
Yeah.
And he stood out to me a little bit earlier in the game too.
See. Yeah. But of course, at the end of the day, it was Mahomes.
Yeah, yeah, and like you knew if they were going to win that. Well, I mean, it wasn't like he didn't earn it. I mean, he had 333 and 2 and 66 rushing yards. He did.
Yeah.
And, they scored on their last 4 drives. It was touchdown, field goal, touchdown. Like they definitely went on offense as Mahomes was able to take them. So, and he had the
Yeah.
huge conversion on 4th and 1 in overtime on
Yeah.
the double option, right? They did a read option to Pacheco, and then they had Kelsey out as a quick passing option that drew the safety attention, and Mahomes took off for like that 5-6 yard gain. Like they definitely revolved their offense revolved around Mahomes, and he deservedly won the MVP of the game.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I guess just switching gears, looking at, all the stat lines and things like that, is there anything that really stood out to you? I know we talked about the Ayuk stuff, we talked about CMC, but guys on either side, you would have given the ball to more, or people they fed too much. I know Debo had a bunch of targets, but only like what, 3 or
11
4
targets,
catches
3
off of.
catches. Yeah.
I
My
mean, was that just great cornerback play or what? I mean, that's ugh.
Well, a lot of it was McDuffie, really. Like McDuffie had
Yeah.
2 pass breakups and a batted pass at the line. I know he got called on for holding, defensive holding on
Hmm.
that last drive in regulation for holding on Juwan Jennings, but he broke up a pass in the end zone on Debo that was like a very difficult
Yeah,
play. Then he broke up a
that
pass
was
on
a great
Ayuk
play.
along the sideline, and he batted a pass at the line, and they were all big plays. Like the two that were or the one on Ayuk and then the batted pass at the line were both on third downs that forced punts. So that had a little bit to do with it. Obviously there's more opportunities if those 3 plays don't happen, but my issue, I think, is what I said from the beginning of the game is it's just the 49ers didn't feel like they pushed the ball downfield at all. And
Yeah,
like I sent you the video of Brett Coleman's analysis on Purdy that Purdy likes to take shots down the field. When the opportunity presents
yeah,
itself, he wants to throw the ball down the field. And I understand playing more conservatively. Especially Debo got banged up in the game with a hamstring. Kittle was
hmm,
obviously out of the game too. So, some of their playmakers were banged up. Maybe they decided to at that point to not run down the field so much, and then they had McDuffie who was making plays down the field. But I would have liked to see San Francisco maybe attack a little bit more and not give McCaffrey 30 touches. I know
yeah,
obviously he's your best player. He had 160 and a touchdown. It wasn't really his fault. On offense, he was doing everything he could, but they just
yeah,
had no explosive plays. And I was talking to Gavin before the game, and I was saying that the 49ers just have this ability to get explosive plays. And I was saying if the score is down, if the score is kept below 27 points, I said I just can't imagine that the Chiefs are going to be able to beat the 49ers because I expected the 49ers to have these explosive plays that just never came. So that
yeah,
would have been my biggest critique of how the 49ers played.
yeah. I mean, that's fair, but I think we got to, like you said, give a lot of credit to Kansas City defense. Obviously
For
the
sure.
corners, but up front too. I mean, I don't know if it's just we're still stuck on this narrative of a few years ago where they're all offense and we don't give their defense enough credit, or because Mahomes gets all the attention. But I mean, they were the better side of the ball this year by far, in my opinion. And we see year in year that that wins championships, and then the offense starts to click at the right time, and it's a recipe for success. And I thought the San Francisco defense played really well too. I think at times they can be a little overrated, but with that Greenlaw injury, that was tough, man. They really started to go after his backup, and it was just such a freak injury. It's tough to see.
Such a bummer,
I don't know
man.
what you think on.
Greenlaw was playing so well too. That was the thing. They had 6 pressures on Mahomes' first 17 dropbacks, and I swear Greenlaw had like 4 of them. He was
Yeah,
all over the backfield and just making plays all over, and then just to pop his Achilles going back on the field is just such a brutal way to get injured, especially in the biggest game of the
yeah.
year.
That was just. I mean, I was just watching. You kind of passively watching some things, and I was like, "What the heck happened?" And then you see it on the replay, and you're like, "Oh God, that's just what that is," and it's not. It's not good.
Yeah,
It's not good.
not at all.
So now here's the big controversy. What are your thoughts on the overtime decision, debacle, fallout? Players saying they didn't know the rules, Kansas City players saying they knew the rules from spring camp or whatever. Let's hear it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm majorly not a fan of Kyle Juszczyk taking the podium and saying he didn't know the rules. Okay, it's like
Yeah.
not only has this been a rule for like 5 years now, is it 4 years?
No, I think this was
It's
2
since the
years.
Kansas City Buffalo game. I think it was 3 or 4
Yeah.
years ago now. Whenever it was, like
Anyway,
the
yeah.
rules had obviously changed. There was big media posts about it. There was a whole social following behind why it was changing, and like to come out and say that you didn't know the rules, to say that you were learning the rules at the same time as Ice Spice was when it was on the Jumbotron is just embarrassing. And
It is.
it's something I just don't believe either. Like whether or not you remembered the rules, whether or not you prepared specifically for that situation for the coin toss is one thing, but to say you didn't know the rules is just to me, is just a flat out lie. So like I was not a fan of that at all, right? And then Kansas City came out and said that they would have deferred, which I thought was a stupid coaching decision in its own right, because you defer and then you let them score a touchdown, you come down, you have to score a touchdown, and then you're going to go for 2 points like that. Sure. I mean, if that's what you're going to do to end your season, go for it. But like, I thought the strategy behind it and what I would have done was taken the ball, just like Shanahan said, you take the ball, you go down and try and score a touchdown. The other team scores a touchdown, kicks the extra point, you get that third possession. And if you kick a field goal on that third possession, you win. And you give your defense a chance to make a stop to win the Super Bowl if you score that touchdown. Now they went down there and they didn't end up scoring, so then it left the
Sure.
possibility open to Mahomes to score. But I thought the strategy was still to take the ball regardless, because you still get the third possession, and if the other team decides to try and end it on a 2-point conversion, there's just not a lot you can do about that, and I wouldn't make that decision. I'm not Boise State, so.
Yeah. Fair enough. I mean, there was it wasn't just Juszczyk though. Wasn't there another guy that was kind of saying the same thing
There was
about
they said
there
that
was
they didn't prepare, right? That Shanahan, that there was no discussion in the lead up. There's no discussion throughout the playoffs
yeah,
about the new rules, right? And Kansas City clearly had prepped for that, and the rule change happened
yeah,
because of a Kansas City game. So like Kansas City
sure.
being more aware and being more prepared for that rule specifically that changed because of a game they were in makes more sense to me. In terms of like discussing the strategy with like everybody on the team and the players and making sure everybody's bought in, I guess I can see some value from like that standpoint, but spending a bunch of time on something that isn't necessarily going to happen when it seems obvious to just take the ball anyways, to me, I didn't really think it was that big of a deal. I thought it was
See,
bad on the players to like go out and say that they didn't know the
yeah.
rules. Like, come on,
I
dude,
mean,
you need to know the rules.
they're kind of throwing their coach under the bus, but they're also, I mean, it's also their job to know. But I definitely disagree because I mean the Niners have been kind of Super Bowl or bust since preseason. That's
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
you're probably going to be in the playoffs. Like it should be something that's discussed. You don't have to have this whole big whatever about it, but hey guys, if we get to this point, we're going to spend the last 10 minutes of practice going through what we're going to do, things like that. So I think there was a lack of preparation on that part. I mean, could you imagine if they had gone down and scored a touchdown and some players thought that they had won the Super Bowl? That would have been meme material for the next 10 years.
Yeah,
But
I also, I guess my part of it, I don't buy that that would have happened. Okay, no players
I don't
running onto
either,
the
but
field and like, no, I've
but
heard that
that
too. I've heard
okay,
other people say
that's
that. I'm like,
fair.
dude, that's
That's fair.
ridiculous. They're
That's
not going
fair.
to
And
run
I
onto the
I
field.
hope
They
that
all
that
know they weren't going
wouldn't
to win.
happen.
Yeah.
But I what I really disagree with is I think that you defer there because on the one hand I get wanting to get the ball back the third time, but the Chiefs defense is playing so well that the idea that you're going to score on them twice back to back drives is very difficult. But the biggest part to me is like you're giving Mahomes 4 downs. So you kick that field goal and now he's in 4 down territory until he gets into field goal range or obviously into the end zone. So I think just giving him that extra down is just it's a tough pill to swallow. I mean, I guess if your MO is to be uber aggressive, then maybe you go for it on 4th down and put your hands in your defense and try to stop them and get the punt back. But I don't know. I have a hard time giving him 4 downs, and it is what it is. If it would have worked, it would have been great. But here we are. But that's kind of where my head's at.
Did you take into account that the 49ers defense had just played in the 2-minute
Yes,
drill on an 11-play drive that resulted in a field goal, right? They finally got a stop. They're gassed at
I
that
get it.
point,
The
right? They get 10
the
minutes or
defense
whatever,
is
but
worn down. I
yeah,
get that.
11-play
But
drive coming right into overtime.
there's still a pause for the coin toss and commercials, and this is the last drive until camp. I mean, you got to dig deep with stuff like that. I get that, but this is the Super Bowl. I
Yeah.
just I respectfully disagree with And it's whatever
Yeah.
side works is the
Yeah.
right side, and
I'm
here
for
we
sure
are,
taking the ball.
and that's fine. And I guess too, this is kind of off topic, but what do you think about? I feel like the narrative is kind of shifting throughout the playoffs. We've gone from, the Chiefs had to beat Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, and those guys have been the kind of, you can't get it done, blah blah blah, and now it's kind of shifted to, well, you got Mahomes, you're a great quarterback, but this is just his prime of prime. Are you kind of getting that same vibe where these guys are not necessarily off the hook, but it's kind of shifting more to this, hey, it's a dynasty and you were born at the wrong time type thing?
No, I don't think so. I
Okay.
think their time will come. They're both still very young.
Yeah.
Lamar just won his second MVP, and I know he's got, like, I don't know. I look at what Mahomes is doing currently, and like we didn't even see this from like we haven't seen this from anybody other than maybe Brady. Right, where after the 28-year-old season, he's got 15 playoff wins and he's 15-3 with 3 Super Bowls. It's just like Brady did it when he was 27, right? That was pretty much it though. And like
Yeah.
look at like Manning, like Peyton had to play at the same time as Brady too, right? So Brady was winning while Manning had to
Yeah,
overcome him. Yeah,
that's true.
you can say that Brady just didn't have the talent that Manning had, and that was true at the beginning, I guess, and that maybe people will still argue that, and that Mahomes has the talent advantage on these other two in terms of quarterback, in terms of the quarterback position. But I think that Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson's time is going to come. I just don't think they're going to be necessarily multiple Super Bowl winners unless, they play a long time and end up getting a second one. But I think both of their times are going to
Yeah.
come. Like Josh Allen's 28 now, I think, and or 29, and Lamar's 27, I think, something like that. So
Yeah.
I think they both have plenty of time. And I think they both will overcome Mahomes at some point. Like Mahomes isn't just going to win all the way to the Super Bowl every year. So, and you look at Joe Burrow. Well, you look at Joe Burrow. I mean, he is
Yeah.
1-3 against Joe Burrow too, where Burrow has made it
Yeah.
to a Super Bowl on Mahomes's watch. And I think,
Yeah.
I obviously Burrow had his own injury issues, and the Bengals had their own overall team issues this year. They didn't even make the playoffs, but I do think that eventually there will be a time and a space that the Chiefs will fall in the playoff run to the Bills and to the Ravens.
Yeah. And I guess looking forward for both teams going into next year, I guess start with Kansas City. Just what do you, obviously they've got a couple big free agents, I believe Jones and Snead, right? They've obviously got some need
Yeah.
at wide receiver, and we don't know if Kelsey's going to ride off into the sunset. I might if I was him. But what do you forecast for that team going forward?
So the first one that I'll address is Kelsey. Like he's coming back. I think we can put that one to bed. He was talking about the 3P, and he was talking about how he's just already focused on next year. Like I just can't imagine that he's going to retire. Um,
Okay.
so that's the first one I'll just put to bed. And until he says that he's retiring, and he's like not playing in week 4, that's probably the point where maybe I'll believe him. But I do agree that they need a receiver. I don't know how badly they need like an elite number 1 receiver, because I have a lot of confidence in Rashee Rice. He really, really came on over the second half of the year and was a top 10 receiver for fantasy football perspective at the end of the year, at the end of the regular season, and he carried it into the playoffs. He didn't score a touchdown, so that held back his fantasy numbers a little bit, but overall he was a
Yeah.
very, very heavily targeted player and very critical to their success on third down and to their success moving the ball overall. So I think adding a receiver would be good. I don't know how much of that 30 million cap space they're going to use going after a big name receiver like Mike Evans, or
Hmm.
trying to land maybe DeAndre Hopkins or something. I don't know that they're going to pay for a guy like that.
Yeah. And then what do you think about Snead and Jones? I mean, that's
I'm not even 100% sure. Like if I was them, I would try and re-sign Jones, but I don't know how much money they're going to have to be able to try and sign them both. So my guess is that Snead would walk and Jones will stay, but I'm not entirely sure how to evaluate that.
Yeah, I guess my opinion on those two, I would probably stick with Jones, just because, with cornerback, you've got McDuffie, and it just seems easier in the draft to find, a corner in the first, second, third, whatever round than it is to just, get an elite pass rusher. The Kelsey stuff, I do agree. I think he's going to have his drunk moments in Cabo and Barstool video clips for the next few months, and maybe get a little bit out of shape and travel with Taylor around the world. But I think he's going to
Eras
get
tour.
bored, and I think he's going to want to get back into it. So I hope to see him again, and I hope for the best ball drafts that I took him late that he's back. Um, and then, I tend to disagree with the receiver. I think Rashi Rice is a really solid number two, but I think that's what he is, and I think they need a bigger bodied guy on the outside. I mean, Mike Evans is what, 30, 31? I mean, you could ink him to a 3-year deal, high money. At what point does he potentially break down? I think they'll definitely target a receiver or two in the draft, whether that's late first or trying to find a diamond in the rough. Um,
Man, you think
my
they're going to go
gut
back to the
feeling,
well at receiver?
it's just, but they've been, you know, Richie James and Sky Moore and these kind of like, middle level, low level guys. I mean, and
Sky Moore
I
was a
know they're
second round
picking,
pick 2 years ago.
yeah,
Sky
but
Moore came into
was
this
he?
year with high expectations.
Would he ball out at Western Kentucky or wherever the heck he played? Like, I want to see him get a big bodied guy from, I think at this point, with the 30th pick or whatever they've got, target like a Troy Franklin out of Oregon. Just Rashi Rice will really be clicking with Mahomes by this time next year, and then maybe sign another free agent who's more of a veteran and can click with him quickly. But yeah, it'll be interesting. But this was supposed to be like the worst Chiefs team that we've seen in
Yeah,
a
it
while,
was.
and they won the Super Bowl, so they're not going to go backwards. So,
No, this
and
this
then
was
on the
everybody
other
else's
side,
chance, right?
yeah, and then on the other side, the team that maybe their window is closing. What do you think about the Niners going forward? I know we've got a bunch of friends that are, you know, very depressed after this weekend that we should probably check in on. But what do you think?
I mean, it's just like how many top end players can you
Do you need?
pay, right? Yeah, and do you
Yeah, can you
need?
have?
So I will say that the thing about the Niners and the way they're built is on Purdy's $500,000 salary. So, not having
Yeah,
to pay your
you,
quarterback and have somebody that, over his 27 starts is 21-6 and has a 28-14 touchdown interception ratio. I mean, that's pretty elite production. Even if you want to call him a game manager because of all the talent around him, I don't really care to participate in that. He's definitely good enough to win. I mean, we saw that he is good enough to
yeah,
win. So they're gonna have to keep all of their players. It feels like though, but they have everybody under contract, right? They have McCaffrey, they have uh, Trent Williams, they have Debo, and then they have Kittle all under contract. So
mhm,
those are their key players on offense. You have in the notes here that Ayuk is extension eligible, but that isn't going to affect them next year. And
mm,
I think that, the window is still very much open for them. I'm not sure on their defensive players or how Greenlaw's uh, recovery is going to go, because that would be definitely a big piece to have slowed for a big portion of next year. But I very much expect San Francisco to be back right on top of the NFC next year.
yeah. I agree. I think they'll be the betting favorite in the NFC to make the Super Bowl going into the year. I think age isn't really a concern yet. I mean, Debo and Kittle are always pretty injury prone, but you got to kind of assume health going into the year, and I think they'll be rock solid and in a good spot. I think
Yeah.
as an organization, they're such a high end, world class organization that they figure out what to do in cap space and all the above. So I have full faith in them going forward. I just think it's tough when you've blown two big leads to the same team within 4 years. The morale, I can imagine,
Yeah.
is not too high, but I know I kind of give Shanahan crap, but he's obviously the guy that they want and is going to be there. So I think they'll be fine, but it's a tough pill to swallow. I mean, for their fans, but it is what it is. Someone's got
Yep.
to win.
Yep. And obviously losing this one is brutal, and it's so funny to think about how good the 49ers have been, even like, while we've been watching throughout the years, even when Kaepernick was there and they still made it to the Super Bowl at that point. Then they made it with Garoppolo. Now they've made it with Purdy. Um, they haven't won a Super Bowl since 95. So like the Super Bowl winning team is not something that our age group has really experienced as a 49er
Hmm.
fan. So like I feel big time for the 49er fans that just want to experience a Super Bowl win, and they just since 95 just haven't had a win.
I
And as
I
unbelievable
I
as it
saw
is that go ahead.
I saw a tweet that made me feel less bad for them because most of the 49ers fans are also Warriors fans and Giants fans. So they've gotten plenty of
Yeah.
championships in the last 10 years.
Yeah, it's true. NFL hits different though, It's like fantasy
Yeah, no,
football versus fantasy baseball and basketball, who cares? No.
yeah, I feel you. I think that's all we had, man.
All right.
That was a good recap and call. And yeah, no, I think,
Do you want
for
to
the next call,
recap?
we'll definitely
Do you want to extend
go
it
ahead.
maybe by 5 minutes at the end here for anybody listening for fantasy football purposes and talk about where we would possibly rank some of these guys roughly going into next year?
Sure.
Let's talk about the quarterbacks. Where would you rank like Mahomes? Are you keeping him in the top three? Is he going to drop to five? Are you going to put him behind Lamar going into next year? Or what are your thoughts on the quarterback position at the top?
Right now, I'm gonna stick with Allen at one, and then I'm gonna go Lamar two, and then I want to have Mahomes three ahead of Hurts. I don't know. Every year it's just these tush push touchdowns. I feel like I don't know if Luck's gonna run out or Jason Kelsey's gonna retire, or he
Kelsey
just
did
doesn't
retire, yeah.
maybe fit. Oh, he's officially retired.
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't see that. Okay,
yeah.
yeah. So and maybe AJ Brown gets traded. We don't know that, but I think Mahomes with three, and we'll see what happens at the wide receiver position. But I know for fantasy purposes, he was kind of a letdown this year, letdown. But
Yeah. Yeah, he was.
that's
You don't even have to put it in
that's where
quotes.
I would have him.
Mahomes was terrible this year for fantasy. Yeah, anybody
Yeah.
that
What
picked
about
him
you?
thinking they were getting an advantage didn't or didn't get one. So,
Well, especially
I
for
think
how early he was going in. I mean, even single quarterback drafts.
mhm,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
for
Sorry.
sure. No, and I think that I'm not sure I'm even going to have him in the top three. Like I think I'd rank Hurts over him. And there are a lot of other quarterbacks that are really good players and really good fantasy players. Like I just can't imagine that I'm going to draft any, or I shouldn't say any. I'm not going to draft much Mahomes next year when Joe Burrow might be going at 8 or 9. Trevor Lawrence probably going outside the top 12. Brock Purdy going around 12. And that's before you even get to like where is Justin Herbert going to land because he had a very disappointing season. Where's Dak Prescott going to land? He had an extremely productive season and they retained McCarthy. So it's going to be the same offense. CeeDee Lamb is still there. Like, Dak ended
Yeah.
up as a top 4 quarterback. So, it's just interesting because I think that having to spend like a third, fourth round pick on Mahomes when there are these other options. Well, I guess we should be talking about it from a super flex 10 team super flex standpoint, but having to
Yeah.
spend a late first or early second on a Mahomes when you can wait until the third or fourth round and get somebody like Dak Prescott, I just don't necessarily think that I'm going to end up spending that pick on Mahomes.
I agree with that. I mean, you asked me to rank them, and I have three that I'm not going to reach. But that's what I really like about Superflex is because if it's a one quarterback league, and then all of a sudden you draft Dak and Purdy at 9 and 10, in the fifth and seventh round, and I don't know. I think that takes some of the fun and some of the strategy out of it. And so
Yeah.
obviously we'll kind of dive more into that. But let's jump to running back because I know we have very different opinions on Brees Hall. Let's hear your top three.
Yeah, well, so CMC is the slam dunk number one, in my
Yeah,
opinion. And then, yeah, I started looking around at some rankings and saw Brees Hall in the top three, and I'm just like, I owned Brees Hall this year. Like, I know that he was not that good until the fantasy playoffs, and he did start going like all the way off. But I think with Rodgers, they're going to have a more efficient offense. They might add another receiver, and Brees Hall might not function as this 10 target per game running back that he was doing at the end of the year. He was like almost the entire offense. So yeah, he'll score some more touchdowns, but he didn't break 50 yards rushing from like week 5 until week 15. So I think that part of his game will pick up. I think the receiving is going to take a big step back, and I just don't have any real intentions of picking Brees Hall in the first, maybe even in the second round. Um, the you asked for the top three running backs. I'm not even sure I'm sold on who I'm going to say is second, but I think Kyron Williams at the point right now is the second running back that's going to go off the board. He's the only game in town. He's still super young, only in his third year, and not a lot of tread on the tires there. Um, but I'm just not 100% sold on the Rams offense or on knowing what exactly the Rams offense is going to be next year. Cooper Cup question marks. Is Kyron, how involved is Kyron going to be in the passing game? Because he had a couple games where he was 6 catches and a bunch of games where he was 0. So I don't particularly want to spend a first round pick on somebody I don't think is going to have any passing game work. So
yeah.
and then third, um, I'm not even sure. I don't have like the players up in front of you. But who are your top three? I guess I talked about three players, but who are your top three?
Yeah, I mean, I CMC obviously, and then I'm going Hall at 2. I think a lot of the points you make against him are points that I sort of make for him, and just the efficient offense, and defenses are going to be focusing on stopping the pass, and
You're just assuming they're going to
their
have an
offense.
efficient offense.
I'm assuming Rogers' health, and yeah, I mean, yes,
Okay.
100%, and I think the
Yeah.
touchdowns will increase, and I think the big plays will increase, and he got healthier as the year came on, and I think he's just an absolute stud talent. And then I think for 3, I'd go Bijan. We'll see what happens with the new regime, but wasn't the first thing the coach said what you're excited about was Bijan and Drake London, and so I can imagine he's going to be super involved. And Kyron, I get it, but I have some of those same hesitations with. We just don't know if McVay, like, he could find a guy in the 6th round that he falls in love with, and we might not see Kyron Williams again. Crazier things have happened. They didn't invest a big pick on him. It's his 3rd year. I don't know. I just wouldn't feel comfortable with drafting him, even over a Jahmyr Gibbs, at this point.
Yeah, which is fair. Like maybe the comparison, I mean, not really comparison, I guess, because Kyron, I think, was a second or a third round pick. So it's not like they didn't use no capital on
No,
him.
no, no. Kyron was a 5th.
Oh, he was a fifth. That's right, because him and Puka were both
Yeah,
fifth round picks. Yeah. I was gonna
yeah.
say he gives me a little bit of James Robinson vibes of, they had literally nobody else on the roster.
Hmm.
They right, like they didn't come into the year expected to be the starter, right? It was Leonard Fournette with James Robinson, and it was Cam Akers with Kyron Williams. So if they end up bringing in a first round running back like the Jaguars did with Travis Etienne, and they bring in some sort of big talent at running back into the Rams, then obviously this is going to change. But at this
Yeah,
point, I
they'll
think,
add
you know,
depth.
we
They'll add depth, and they'll maybe draft someone. The running back class this year, isn't the best, but we see year in year again where it's the 5th round guy. It's Keaton Mitchell undrafted. These guys take the league by storm and young fresh legs. So I wouldn't read too much in the narrative of this running back class sucks. We don't have the Bijans or the Gibbs type prospects, sure, but every year it's these late round guys come on and are difference makers, especially in the
yeah,
second half.
yeah. I'm not sure I'd qualify Keaton Mitchell as that, but yeah, sure, they'll give you that.
Well, okay, he was almost, he was on his
Uh,
way.
did he get even 70 touches this year?
He got hurt. He finally he was hurt, electric, and then hurt.
Yeah, no,
It's
I
hard.
get
It's
it.
hard
The
to pass Justice
explosive
Hill on the.
talents are the ones that take touches
Yeah,
away from the lead backs, right? So I understand what you're saying, but
yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
saying Keaton Mitchell might not have been the best example.
Fair enough. How about Devon Achan? Is that better for you?
That's way better. Yeah, Devon
Third
Achan
round pick.
was
Yeah,
unbelievable. Yeah, yeah, and he's another guy that I expect to go in the top 10 of running backs, and somebody that I'm
yeah.
not gonna be crazy to draft if Raheem Mostert is still there. Um, we'll see. Mostert's going to be 32 next year, so he still would be the oldest running back if he is back with the Dolphins in the league. But I mean, talk about just an
I don't know
absolute
what.
sensation this year.
Unbelievable, man. I don't know how. I mean, the fact that he stayed healthy and was that productive was really, really incredible.
Just a nose for the end zone for sure. Yeah. So moving on to the receivers, and specifically, I guess we're getting a little long here, so we can wrap it up here on this conversation with Ayuk and Debo. I think maybe I'll ask it this way: who would you rank first between Ayuk and Debo, and roughly where would you put them within your receiver ranks?
Oh man, it's tough. I mean, if we're talking, they're both such better best ball type receivers where you're just gonna have to live with the spike games and the low games. And for fantasy, for the three wide receiver league that we play in, that's fine to have kind of that lotto ticket. I think at this point I would have IU just ahead of Debo. Debo has had health concerns, obviously. I think you know Ayuk is younger and yada yada yada, but it's so close for me. And I think with those guys, off the top of my head, I don't have my rankings in front of me, but maybe in the 15-ish range, similar to like a Rashi Rice, Nico Collins, maybe Olave
So let
ahead
me
or
throw out
behind the. Go ahead.
let me throw out some names here, and I'll say. So it sounds like you're going to rank Debo and Ayuk very closely together. So
Yeah.
I'll say like a name, and then just say if you take that name over those two guys or those two guys ahead of the name. So what about
Okay.
Devontae Adams,
Devontae ahead.
DJ Moore
DJ Moore behind.
behind them?
Only because we don't know the quarterback situation.
That's fair.
If it's Justin Fields and no one else, I'll take DJ Moore. But we have no idea. I mean, it might be Caleb. Caleb loves to spread the ball around. We'll see. TBD.
What about Michael Pittman, assuming Anthony Richardson stays healthy?
I think I'm going to roll with Pittman just because he's really that true number one.
Olave.
I'm a huge Olave guy. I'm
Yeah.
I'm going Olave over this guy.
Mike Evans, assuming he resigns in Tampa Bay with Baker. There's a lot of
You
stipulations there,
know,
but let's go with that for this situation.
I was fading Evans this year for all the wrong reasons, and he's just an absolute monster who's going to get a bunch of targets from Baker. So let's go Evans there.
Okay. What about Metcalf?
Ayuk and Debo.
Okay. So we're getting down to the 17, 18 range. What about Jalen Waddle?
Ayuk.
Okay, so
Debo.
you said about 15, 16. That's pretty much right where you're gonna end up putting him. So
Yeah.
all right,
Any
man. Well,
guys? Go ahead. Or yeah,
oh
wrap it
no,
up.
no, no, go for it.
I was gonna say any guys that can consensus that you're way different on for the wide receiver. So maybe you have Amon Ra at 10, maybe you have Puka at 25. Any guys that are just sort of looking at consensus ADP right now, what your way have a very different opinion on.
Well, I think you're teeing me up there for Puka. I'm not a big Puka fan. I'm probably not going to end up with him on any teams.
Mm.
If he's going to hold in the top 10 of receivers, I don't have any interest in that. I think Cooper Kupp is going to come back healthy next year, and there's a legitimate connection there. I think Kupp was
Yeah,
working off of injuries just constantly throughout the year this year, and if he is healthy, we get good reports on him out of camp. Puka can still be good. Puka will still be right there alongside him. But if there's going to be boom games for Kupp, there's just not going to be enough room for Puka, in my opinion, to be a top 10 receiver. Another guy in the top 10 that I'm going to have no interest in drafting is Stephon Diggs. I would pick him around
Yeah.
the Ayuk and Kittle range, but like
Yeah.
if you're talking to me about some of these other receivers, like even Michael Pittman, I have a lot more confidence in. And if I can wait multiple
Sure.
rounds and pick Rashee Rice or Jalen Waddle or Keenan Allen, that's what I'm going to do at receiver. I'm just not going to use my pick on Stephon Diggs because I just don't feel like he gives me enough of an advantage. And it's 2 straight seasons where his production towards the end of the year just fell apart, which
Yeah.
if you're trying to compete for a title, you can't have one of your high-end players fall apart at the end of the year. You will lose with Stephon Diggs on your team at the end of the year
Yep.
if it happens a third straight year, and that's just not something I'm interested in owning.
I mean, I lost in the semis with Stephon Diggs on my team. I
Yeah,
get it.
6 points or
It's
whatever. Yeah, so
yeah, it's one of those things where, if I were to draft him, it would be he really falls because everyone feels the same way, and then trade him after week 3
yeah,
would be the
it's two
strategy with him.
two guys later in the draft that a receiver that I probably won't be drafting now. This will change. This first one will change if Justin Fields goes to the Steelers, but I have no interest in drafting George Pickens in the top 50 picks. Preliminarily, I've seen him there. I know it's best ball, so they're looking for those explosive games from him, but
Yeah,
I have no
it's
interest in
different.
drafting him in the top 30 receivers. He's way too boomer bust. And I'm looking at it a little bit too much from a 3 wide receiver perspective, but when you're looking at possibly starting 4 receivers and you pick Pickens to be one of those guys, by the time we're looking at week 3 or 4, you're going to be looking to your bench to replace that guy in your starting lineup. That's
Yep,
not somebody that I want to use a draft pick on that early. I'd much rather pick Cooper Kupp, who's going right next to him. I'd much rather pick Devontae Smith, who's going
100%.
right next to him. I'd much rather pick Zay Flowers, who's going right next to him. So just I understand the boom. I understand he's going to win you some weeks, but those weeks might come on your bench because you're just so sick
Yeah,
of getting 2 or 3 points out of him because
yeah.
Pickett can't get him the ball. Now, like I said, if it's Fields, I'll have a lot more confidence that he can increase his consistency. Um, but barring some sort of big change at the quarterback position, that's how I feel on Pickens.
I agree 100%. And then on top of that, it's Arthur Smith is the new OC, so I got to think it's going to be the third string receiver show, and whoever backs up Jalen Warren running the off.
Hmm.
It's a clown show with that guy. So, even in best ball, I've stayed away with the pre-draft stuff with him. I'd much rather take a shot on one of the higher regarded rookie receiver. And I always target rookie guys, but
Yeah.
someone like that over, and just being patient and just having more of a high floor for the first few weeks and just try to knock out, a few wins to start the year.
Yep. All right. Well, great episode, man. This is our first shot at it, so we will continue to make these as we go through the off season. Get into a little bit more fantasy related stuff. I know it was a lot of big, heavy Super Bowl recap analysis on our thoughts from that game, but we'll start doing more position breakdowns, more comparisons between players, try and work in some games and stuff into the podcast to make it a little bit more entertaining. And until
And
next
some
time.
mock drafts.
Yeah, yeah. Mock draft Mondays, maybe work those in a little bit. Yeah, so have
There
those
you go.
displayed on screen. That'll be fun. So we're looking forward to continuing to do this, and hopefully, if you're out here watching and you made it this far in the video, thank you for that. And we look forward to the next one. See you guys next time.